You know, I've never done something like this before, so it might be scuffed. But, hi, my name's Dewey. I'm currently, well, I guess, in a sophomore in college? Maybe? It is. I just finished my freshman year, so I guess I'm considered a sophomore, an incoming sophomore in college. But I want to basically recap my freshman year in college as a electrical engineering major, and well, I was previously a computer engineering major and I changed to electrical engineering. So yeah, so let's get started. I want to talk about some of my classes and I guess the experience. So first I want to talk about, I guess, the experience. I made a decent couple of friends. There's a lot of uhs. Okay, so I made a few friends. Some of my friends I made mostly through math classes or other classes, but we usually eat out a lot, so, and I guess that is how we bond. But other than that, college life is okay. I lived in a dorm. My roommate was decent, fairly decent. He would play League of Legends up until 3 in the morning when I had 8 a.m.s. And I feel like college 8 a.m.s are a lot harder than high school 8 a.m.s, mostly because the 8 a.m.s in college are not really mandatory, I guess, or at least for the class that I had the 8 a.m. and it wasn't really mandatory. But yeah, other than that, it's okay. I didn't go to this 8 a.m. at all. Well, I did for the first semester or the first quarter when I had the 8 a.m. and then I just couldn't wake up. But I think that is all that I want to say about my experience. But so let's get started into the classes. And I'm trying to remember on top of my head. I have it written down here. But for the first class I had was a programming class. It was Introduction to Programming for Engineers or something like that. Something along the lines of that, where they taught you the basics of C++. It was taught by a graduate student, and it was pretty good. So most of the learning was done through the projects that you did. We had 4 projects. I don't really remember the first 2, but I remember they were kind of like using if and else statements a bunch of times and C-outing a bunch of things, which was okay. And those were fairly simple and straightforward. But the last 2 projects were pretty difficult. For example, we had to use arrays, right? Arrays, which is a data structure and a bunch of computer science stuff. So we had to use arrays and basically mimic, recreate John Conway's Game of Life. And that was really, really difficult because we had to use only one array. Like, we were not allowed to use a 2D array or anything like that. So that made it a whole lot more difficult. And it had to do something with memory as well, which at this point I completely forgot. And that project basically built on the next one, which was a Pokédex array, if I remember correctly, which used structs and arrays. So yeah, I think those were very, very difficult from what I remember. And then my other classes were well, I'll go in order. Is Calculus 2, and Calculus 2 is basically a bunch of integrals I remember in the beginning, and then there was like a few other things like the ratio test and a bunch of stuff. I really forgot it, so I have to probably relearn that sometime soon. before taking Calculus 3, which I was told it does show up again. And that is all I could remember about Calculus 2. Oh yeah, there was like a few things about arc length and stuff like that. But I think that is all for Calculus 2. Along with that, I had like some general education stuff like English Composition 2, English Lit. English Comp 2 was basically you read stuff that the instructor gave you, you write discussion posts, and every now and then you'll get tested over something that you read. It wasn't so bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I did good on it. So, and then there was English Lit. English Lit was horrid. It wasn't, I didn't do bad in the class. I didn't do as bad as I thought I did. But for English Lit, you had to read, in the first quarter, you had to read, I don't know, a few books. I didn't like reading, so I read all the books for the first quarter. However, I just didn't like reading in general. Or at least, I didn't like reading those books. And then the second quarter, I did not read any books. I just paid attention to what was discussed in class and somehow did okay in the class. But it went through most of American literature from, let's see, there was something about Life of a Slave to Ernest Hemingway's something about bullfighting. I completely forgot at this point, and then it ended with Hurricane Katrina. A story about Hurricane Katrina was like something the bones, which yeah, I did I did focus on this class a lot, but that is all I will say for American Lit. And then I had data structures and algorithms for the first quarter. I feel like I was doing good every time there's like a first quarter in a class. For the first quarter, there was some algorithms, simple algorithms. There's bubble sorts, a bunch of sorting algorithms, and I know for the class you had to handwrite your code for all these algorithms and stuff. And in the second quarter, we covered trees and depth first search, and there was something about Dijkstra's algorithm, which I completely forgot. Hash tables and a certain hash. There's like square hashing, I think, or something, a couple like that. But it was something I did not focus on much, and that kind of hurt me in the end. But I did okay in the class, mostly because of how the grades were distributed. I think the finals and the midterm were only 10%, so I could afford to do not so good on them. But I did well in the projects and stuff, mostly because I basically went to my TAs for almost everything. And some of my friends also struggled in it too, mostly because the instructions were really bad. But other than that, I think it's an okay class. It's just, oh yeah, just to mention, the data structures and algorithms was my 8 a.m. class, and it was very, very difficult to really go. And so, yeah, probably something to blame. But yeah, I think that is my critique of the class. And after that, I had Circuits 1. Circuits 1 was very, very difficult. Not because it was, I don't know. Its difficulty came in understanding, right? So at the very beginning, we covered Ohm's law, Kirchhoff's laws, and stuff like that, series and parallel, and I don't know. I think that is the basics. series and parallel, Ohm's law. Yeah, pretty much everything with linear components. And the issue with all these was that Kirchhoff's voltage laws, or like no voltage, just talking about just voltage as a quantity was very difficult for me because I didn't understand it was pertaining to two points of reference, and so I thought it was just like one thing, but it's not. So yeah. Other than that, I think it's okay. The difficulty came at the very end, I think, and the very beginning, because I couldn't relate a bunch of stuff together. Supernode, super mesh, not supernode, super mesh. Nodal voltage analysis was when I could relate everything together. And so everything became a lot easier because I could pretty much understand how everything was. I guess the entirety of the big picture I could understand. And let's see, at the very end we talked about inductors and capacitors and stuff like that. However, this class also had a separate class, and it was a lab. And the lab was very, very difficult for me because I couldn't really put the theory into practice. And so for the lab, most of the labs I just took the entirety of the lab time when they were fairly simple looking backwards. Like there was an oscilloscope lab where we just had to hook an op amp to an oscilloscope. Now I know how to do it, but then I just didn't have a single clue. But yeah, at the end of the lab course there was a practical test actually. And the practical test basically had to use everything that you've learned so far. So it had to do with the op amp, it had to do with the oscilloscope, setting up the oscilloscope, setting up the function generator. There's a few other things that I don't know. Yeah, so the way that was structured was that you can retake the practical exam if you failed it the first time. And I failed it the first time, and it was not so fantastic. I think I made so the passing grade was a 65, I think. Yeah, it is a 65. And I made a 52. No, I don't think I made a 52. I made a little bit lower than a 52. I was ways off from passing, just to say the least. But, the thing about that is that I found out how to use the power supply properly as a constant current source, which I didn't know how to do it back then, the first time I was taking it. And the op amp, they used simple op amp topologies, and so you could do that. And I guess I tried to memorize this simple op amp topology. There's non-inverting and inverting, and that's the thing that I remembered. And that was fairly simple, but the most difficult thing was putting the circuit together, because it was very, very hard to really check your work, because trying to do the theoretical values, you had to do either nodal voltage analysis or mesh current analysis. And the easier way to do it was mesh current analysis, because there was an independent current source that could help you. But it was difficult because there were 6 meshes that you had to actually do if you were going to do the mesh current analysis. And I did not want to do that, so I just basically measured whatever it was that I built and hoped that it was right. And the second time I made a 92 out of 100, and that was pretty good. That was phenomenal. And I ended with an A in the class. And despite it being a 1 credit class, I think it was my hardest class, genuinely. While other people were just like passing it with like breeze. And yeah, that was all I have to say for the lab section of circuits. And then there is linear algebra. Linear algebra is an okay class. It was just a memorization class. Memorizing certain wording and techniques on how to do stuff. And when you memorized it, you basically just like, I don't know, do it on an exam and then poof, you're done. Because the class was basically just 4 exams, and after that, you're all good. I can't say I learned much in linear algebra, but yeah. And then I have differential equations. Differential equations was okay as a class. I think differential equations was taught by the same professor who taught my Calculus 2 class, and it ran pretty much exactly like that. The way I practiced for it was doing a bunch of practice problems that the professor would give me, and these practice problems basically were very much like the ones on his exams, and the ones on his exams are pretty difficult, and the reason why they're difficult was because he picks the trickiest ones to do. So the practice sets are 60 questions, and I would practice 40 to 60, which is a lot, especially when I had mountains of circuits homework to do, and many other things. But all in all, I think it was okay. I did pretty well in this class as well. And then lastly, I had religious studies. I don't know. Oh, yeah. We covered some stuff about various religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and the various Christianities. There is something about, is it called radicalism? I forgot, but basically, oh no, it's called extremism. Yeah. From pushing certain religions to an extreme end and stuff like that. There's something about dualism. We had to watch a movie and write about something, and write about how religion is portrayed. I think I picked The Life of Brian, and I got a B on it. And it was okay. I ended with an A in the class, but I did pretty good. And I think that is all that I took. So I guess this concludes my recap. Thank you.